you have to experience this in a controlled environment where, oh, I feel what this feels like. I want nothing to do with this. I think it's Emerson or Thoreau has a great quote that says, I pity the man who never as a young boy fired a rifle so that he could feel in his bones the extent of a man's rage.
111, 110.
You training to be a street cop?
Hey guys, welcome to this episode of the Street Cop Training Podcast. We host founder and CEO of Street Cop Training. My name is Dennis Benino, and today I have with us a person a lot of you might know from social media. He's really taken off on a lot of big fucking podcasts. Dude, you're doing great things for the world. I actually bought the book. Listen to the book, just so we're clear. Your boy here don't read. I do if I have no other option, but books, if they're available on audiobooks, that's the way that I go. And it was a good read, dude. It was a good listen. I was very happy with it, and it came at a time in my life when I needed it the most. So just so you know, your work really does wonderful things for the world. But if you don't know who this is, by what I've said so far, this is Dr. John Deloney. And I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come here and speak to the law enforcement audience and non-law enforcement audience about what you do. And namely, you've created a career around anxiety, right?
Well, I think it was kind of an accident, man. It was a little piece of it, but dude, I'm grateful, man. My father was an entire career in law enforcement. I grew up in that home, and then I've spent most of my adult life either working adjacent with or supervising law enforcement officers or being on patrol out there doing some pretty wild stuff, man. So there's nobody that it's not commissioned that doesn't see the inside of what you guys do, and I'm super grateful. Grateful.
Dude, tell us about you. Like, where did you grow up? What's your story? Tell us about the law enforcement, growing up with a pop who's in law enforcement, what that was like, and where some anxiety started, how you continue to work with law enforcement.
Yeah, so my dad worked homicide for Houston Police Department, and he was the hostage negotiator for the SWAT team. And so I just have these very vivid memories as a kid of when things got sideways. My dad had that I just call it the grin. But every good law enforcement officer I know gets the grin, and he'd put on his bulletproof vest, and he would get in his car, and he would drive downtown into it, and whatever it was. And sometimes it was 12 hours, sometimes it was 36 hours. And he would sit there and talk to people who were going to blow something up or jump off of something. And he was also working homicide during the day. And so I learned, man, to sit down and just unpack the lessons I learned from growing up in my house. I might write that book someday, just called Son of a Cop or something. But
that's cool.
I learned everything from in your community, when things go sideways, you go into the problem. That's where the solution's going to be. Running away from it doesn't help anybody. I learned on the negative side, if you don't deal with the stuff you see every day, it will alter your body's response to the natural world. And so my dad spent 24 hours of his day dealing with things that never happen. Nobody gets chopped up with an axe by their boyfriend, except if you work homicide, that's all you deal with all day long. And so it altered the way when his son is 14 minutes late from a date, his brain goes to, oh man, I know this phone call, right? And so it altered reality, I think, in my home. I also watched my dad be a public servant. And I remember at a very young age watching my dad put his life on the line, have to wear a bulletproof vest under a suit every day, also put his ATM card in the machine and possibly not be able to have groceries for the family. And very, very modest family. We shared one car plus cruiser plus in a suburb of Houston. I, at a young age, remember distinctly thinking to myself, if that's what the public thinks of public servants, I'm out. I don't want to do that. I'm gonna go chase money and titles because I don't want that life. And so dude, I learned the whole thing. And I also learned how much my community respected my dad and how many people showed up at our house in the middle of the night, on the weekends, phone calls. So it was a pretty remarkable childhood, man. I would not trade that for anything in the entire world. And then as I got into college, I started doing SWAT trainings. I was the bad guy, and they would give me some guns with blanks, and it always ended really badly for me. And I'd end up hogtied and flashbanged, and it would just be a disaster. And then from there, I partnered up with my great mentor, Dr. Andy Young, who started I mean, he's a Christian and said that if when he reads the New Testament, it says you should spend time with widows and orphans. So he got himself a police radio and just started showing up to scenes for 10 years by himself. And over time developed trust. And you know how intimate that trust is in the law enforcement community. And now 20 years later, has a team of 30 or 40 people that show up to suicide scenes and domestics and deaths and all sorts to sit with the victims so the police officers can do their job and then get back on the street. And
Wow.
it's become one of the most remarkable programs in the country. But I was really blessed to be inside of that when it started and or right after it started, and got to see some hard stuff and some beautiful stuff and see some remarkable men and women out there serving their communities in the middle of the night when everybody else is asleep. So it's been a remarkable run of it, man.
So where does the doctor part come in? How do you go that route?
I was a high school teacher. I got out of college and I was a basketball track coach at a giant high school in Houston, and then ended up going back to work at my alma mater as the dean of students. And I was doing student conduct stuff, and the security office reported up through me, and it's slowly baby stepping into sexual assault investigations and dating domestics and then suicide. And so slowly you're always partnering and working. We did some child pornography. I mean, it's just a mess, just chaos, as everybody knows. And then from there started the graduate school route and got a master's and PhD in education so I could continue being a dean of students. And similar to what we were talking about before the show started, I had everything, man. Great salary, great wife, healthy young kid after 4 years of trying to have kids and not being able to, 3 years trying to have kids, had everything. And I was working 24/7, 365 in hospitals 3 or 4 nights a week, making all the hard phone calls to parents all the time. And then by day doing budgets and doing whatever you got to do at your day job. And finally my body said, dude, I quit. If you're not going to listen to me, I'm out. And so I ended up quitting that job and went to work as a dean of students at a law school at a university there in Texas, and ended up getting a second PhD in counseling. I realized I was out of water with my students. I started in 2004 and now it's 2023. You've been on the street and your colleagues have been on the street. The world's changed in the last 2 decades. And I was out of my head, over my head. I didn't know about mental health stuff. And then also, dude, I had to figure out what happened to me. I had everything. My parents been married for 50 years. I had everything. And that didn't mean anything to a body that had detected an environment that wasn't safe anymore. And so I slowly started nickel and diming my way. I love education. I love learning, and ended up with a second PhD in counseling, and have spent the last X number of years doing that. And then I transitioned here to writing books and podcasting and radio shows, and joined with Dave Ramsey and his team, and haven't looked back since, man.
Yeah, that's amazing. And the social media presence is really, really profound. How did you start that?
I mean, I didn't have social media until I started working with Dave Ramsey. I just didn't believe in it. And it's just part of the job. And so really I started, every time I'd screw something up in my house with my wife, with my kids, I would just write myself a note. And I started posting those notes because I didn't know how social media worked. I just started posting those notes, and all of a sudden, man, it just took off. And I realized I wasn't the only dad trying to get it right, and the only dad reaching into his toolkit to solve a problem with a kid or a spouse, and realizing I didn't have enough tools in there, and I had to go learn something new. And it's been pretty remarkable, man. And then we started a little show, and then the show has just had a life of its own, man. It's been pretty remarkable. So one of the top shows in the country. So it's been just a wild ride. And I'm an introverted nerd who just likes showing up in the middle of the night and dealing with the hard, messy stuff, and then going back to my bed and kind of laying low. And so this whole spotlight thing's been new for me, but we're figuring it out as we go, man.
What does a dad do to get it right?
Says the 2 most important words of the English language: I'm sorry, and keep showing up. I think if dads will say the words I'm sorry and keep showing up, that's 95% of it. Most dads have too much pride to say the words I'm sorry. They flex, they yell, they scream, they use the kid as a human report card for how well they're doing. They use their children for their own self-esteem, or their athletic performance, or their dance recital performance for their own self-esteem. Or they get sideways with a kid and they don't have the tools to come back. And they think my kid would be better off if I left him alone. And that could be a 7-year-old, that could be a 13-year-old, that could be an 18-year-old. It'd just be better if I just go do my job. I don't know how to do this parent thing very well, but I kick ass at my job. I'm gonna go do that. And so I'm just going to fade out. And so dads quit showing up, or dads don't have the courage to say the words, "I'm sorry."
You said that those two things were 95%. What's the other 5%?
Balancing, balancing accountability and parenting with loving the kid in front of you. And what I mean by that is every kid has to be respectful. Every kid has to treat people with dignity. Every kid has to work hard. I remember my dad, I was a 2-year varsity starter at a super 5A high school in Texas. And so the Texas football stuff, it's true. It's real. It's a quasi religion, and there's 7,000 or 8,000 people at every game. And my brother is a savant. He's brilliant and an incredible man, but he was a scholarship cellist. He played cello. And so my dad didn't try to force my brother to be a football guy. My dad wore my letter jacket. And then he never missed one of my brother's concerts, he still required that both of his sons work real, real hard and put in all their effort. Just one kid was doing it on a football field. One kid was doing it, learning classical music. But the demands were still the same, and the accountability was the same, and tell the truth was still the same. And so I think it's balancing what I want for my kid. And I know how hard the world is. So I want my kid to be tough, and I want to be able to hold his own. And also balancing, one of my kids is an artist, is a brilliant artist. And one of my kids is a human hurricane. And so I've got to hold accountability and temper on both sides of that.
I have 4 different kids, and what people don't understand about parenting is I have 4 different personalities.
That's exactly right.
One crew, when they band together, become one Megatron transformer.
It's so amazing.
Complete chaos. But the reality is there has to be this balance in my house of fairness delivered in different ways.
Right.
And that's a tricky thing, but with intention and love. And if you would ask me the same question, like, how do you know you're a good father or a great father? Because every day I live with the purpose of becoming or being a great father.
It's awesome.
That's how I think about how I make my decisions. If I was them, how would they see me right now? Last night, if you ever follow my personal Instagram, you get to see the chaos of the Benino household. And, listen, people, the reason I have it private, obviously, because we have a lot of notoriety, and I'm not trying to welcome unwanted people. I'm a human being, and I have a life myself as well. But, oh, man, last night I was tired, John. Oh, my God. And so my daughter says, can you do makeup? And it's like, dude, Monday Night Football is just coming on. Obviously, last night was a big game. And I'm not like some nut. I just was like, I really wanted to catch this game. And I put a whole day in. I mean, like literally to the minute I sat down on the couch. I mean, I was just nonstop at the house doing things. But I said, yeah, you could do my makeup. She's like, well, come sit at the table. I'm like, well, the caveat is, Miss 4-year-old, you got to bring your makeup over here. And if you go to as a matter of fact, if you follow me after this, you go to my personal Instagram, you'll see a video of her doing my makeup. It's actually very comical while I'm sitting there trying to watch football. And she's laughing and having a great time. And dude, I really try to live in the moments, and I try to make their life as enjoyable with their father as humanly possible.
And here's the deal. I think we make every parenting engagement the Super Bowl. And your kids will not tell the sex talk at your funeral. They will tell the time. Remember that time when you were 4 and you were putting makeup on dad while he was watching the Eagles play? They'll tell that story, because that tells your daughter, I see you and I love you. And I'm going to sit here, and even though you can feel the awkwardness on my body, your old man sat in it. And I think that's a beautiful, beautiful thing, man.
I can't wait for them to tell my grandchildren what I was like.
It's awesome.
Like, how excited I am for that.
But that's a generational view of parenting. It's not a shut up right now, I'm trying to do a thing right now. That is, in 50 years, what is the story they're going to tell about me? And how can I honor them?
50.
Yeah. How can I honor them right now by that story? That'd be amazing, dude.
Yeah, dude, I can't wait in my head, I hear it a lot, like, oh, grandpa was, anytime you want to do anything, he would come out, he would get all the dirt bikes out, we would go riding in the woods. I mean, you could ask him any time of the day. It didn't matter how tired he was. He'd come out and he'd play with us. And you know what? Sometimes we caught on to the fact that he was exhausted, but he still never said no.
And then one of them's going to say, one time I called Granddad at 2 a.m. and he came and got me. And everybody will smile, and one other one will get a tear in their eye, and they'll say, yeah, I called him one time too. Right. I mean, it's all of it. It's all of it. And that's beautiful. But you're thinking down the road, brother. And that's awesome. That's showing up. That's amazing.
We have two of them in jiu-jitsu, right? And they're actually, the one is getting very good. The one's getting very good. The other one's just a little bit younger. And so, it was brought to my attention this morning that some kid on the bus had passed comments to him about his haircut. Got a nice haircut. That's a fucking $40 haircut, Jersey. You know what I mean? So I said, what'd he say? He goes, oh, he said, nice hairline to me. I go, how'd that make you feel? He goes, maybe feel like I'm getting bullied. I go, and I said to his older brother, I go, you're on a bus. You gonna take care of that? He's like, well, I said something. I go, listen, let's shut this shit down today. And then their mother's like, don't even start. This isn't 1995. And I'm like, listen, I'm telling you right now, your father's position on things. That kid gives you a hard time again. Knock his teeth out, and we'll figure it out tomorrow. And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, we got 3 years on the bus, right? So you got a clan against this kid. I promise you, if you let him know that the next thing's coming is a fist to the face, he'll probably stop talking shit to you. He goes, well, he's in 5th grade, Dad. I go, yeah, but you're fighting jiu-jitsu, and you're going to be a gray belt soon, and I've seen you fight, so I wouldn't have anything to worry about. My feeling is, at your size, that if he started to get silly with you, you got a brother, you got 2 backups on the bus. Just let him know. Next thing you say, you're getting punched in the mouth. And so, I have instilled that in my kids, and I know violence isn't the answer at all times, but when it comes to childhood stuff, to me, I've let them know, in defense of yourself or defense of somebody else. I don't care how much your principal tells you you're in trouble. I promise you're getting a fucking party when you come home, because that's the shit that we wanted. We the Beninos are protectors. We protect ourselves, and we protect others who can't protect themselves, and that's how you boys are going to be raised. That's it. There'll be never a judgment about that. Yeah, but if I find out you're a fucking bully, and I told him this, I go, your life will end so fast. My one son, I told him, I said, he was being addicted to his friends at his birthday party. And so I brought him home, and I'm like, man, I got to get through to this guy. And I'm like, hey, my man, the way you made your friends feel today, like it's no good. Like that was some real horse shit. And to be honest with you, you hurt their feelings. So much so, if they would have done it to you, you would have been devastated. So if you can't include these 2 kids who love you to death because you think you're cool for a day, I can't have you go into this school anymore. And you're going to have to go to a school 10 miles. I got to drive you 2 towns down to a different school. And he was like, what? And I'm like, so if I hear that you bully somebody ever again or ostracize somebody because they want to be your friend and you think you're too cool for it, just remember, you're going to be at a different classroom at a different school until you can figure out and you'll know what it feels like to be the kid who's not known by anybody, who needs friends. And then maybe in a year, we'll bring you back to your regular school to go back to your real friends. And dude, that was the only time he was like, oh, no. And I'm like, I don't ever want to see that again. Like, there's nothing that frustrates me more than I was raised by a bully. My father was a bully. So that's where that comes from. Right. The kids are in jiu-jitsu because of, how helpless I felt at times.
And I won't talk about it fully here because I think it's still in play, but I've had some moments when I was very, very proud of my son for he's a humongous kid, and standing between other people who are getting pushed around or saying, I'm not gonna be a part of this anymore. I've raised him a little differently, that you have to know how to take care of yourself if you're going to be a provider. And the world's an ugly, messy place. I think we have been as overly sanitized in our current public school system. I think you can trace that back to when they instantly just start taking kids to jail. Like, if you fight, you go to jail. And I think I understand the intention behind it, but I think that's caused a lot of downstream challenges that used to be. There's a pressure release valve that's no longer there. But I've told my son, like, if you come home and you've tried A and you've tried B and you've tried C, and then it failed that you had to defend somebody, then like you, I'll celebrate you. But I invert it. Let's flip it around. If you can walk away, be a person, walk away because you're big and you're strong. Walk away.
Unfortunately, they got to be on the bus every day, right? So
there you go.
Walk away from.
And the bus
it's different than pop at a bar.
Tough. That's right.
Dad goes out for a drink somewhere with his friends. The 1 out of 6 times a year that I actually go out. Dude, I mean, I'm not getting involved. I was out at a place this summer, like reliving my 20s, and like, dude, shit hit the fan. And bro, I couldn't be out fast enough, which is completely contrary.
That's
like
right.
I'm God, bro. Like
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
fucking out.
That's right. That's right.
Like I
But
get involved. Like they're fighting. There's 30 people fighting. I'm like, yo, let me get 2 shots for me and this guy over here. Like we're gonna hang out while this whole thing gets cleared up. The SWAT team's running, and I'm like, yeah, I mean, I'm here for those guys if they need the help. But dude, I'm not fighting nobody.
No, dude, no. In fact, it was I learned that though, and strangely enough, I learned that in an MMA gym. Like I was a hot-headed, loudmouth idiot. And I'll never forget getting worked over by the sweetest 5'6", 145-pound. His name was Mateo. He was a nurse that worked the night shift, had 2 kids, an incredible wife. He's a great guy. And he knocked me senseless for round after round. And I remember thinking, oh, I need to keep my mouth shut. Right.
Oh, yeah.
And I need to actually, if I walk around here like, I'll take care of my family and my friends and my community, you take care of nothing, dude. Right. So it was a great humbling moment. But I walked away from MMA gym like, dude, I'm never going to fight again. Unless you just, that was the beauty of it for me, was it took all of the wind out of that macho Texas male sales of mine. And it turned it into something I can actually learn in a tool set to be used only when you got to break the glass in case of an emergency, right?
Dude, it is not what it was 20 years ago when you
That's a
fought
wild
somebody
world.
and it was just literally just a brawl. Now, you don't know, dude. You don't know what you're up against. And they have a professor at their school. She's probably 45, 46, maybe 48. She's a 2nd degree jiu-jitsu black belt. And, you know, we always laugh because one of our instructors brings his kids there too. And I'm like, he's like, dude, imagine you see her at like the grocery store. You start getting into it. You bump carts. She'll kill you.
Oh, dude, I ran into some time. I remember running into BJ Penn after he put George St. Pierre in the hospital way back in the day. And I remember thinking, oh, I wouldn't think twice about scrapping with this guy, little bitty guy. And I would have woke up 4 days later in a 4th dimension. Like I would, I mean, I would have
3 less teeth.
And 4 less limbs. Right. So, yeah, I think I get what we've done with violence and aggression, all this. And the challenge is we've intellectualized it. And I don't think that's how it works. I wish that's how it worked. Honestly, I wish I could read a book and talk to my 13-year-old son and say, hey, this is how this works. And he goes, okay, thanks, Dad. It's just how it works.
Right.
It has to be flipped around, and you have to experience this in a controlled environment where, oh, I feel what this feels like. I want nothing to do with this. I think it's Emerson or Thoreau has a great quote that says, I pity the man who never as a young boy fired a rifle so that he could feel in his bones the extent of a man's rage. And there's something powerful about, we're big hunters where we are. And I remember at a very young age, in a very highly controlled environment, watching a hunting rifle, the kick of a hunting rifle ricochet through my son's body. And
wow,
instantaneously profound respect for this thing, this environment. And so when Dad says, be safe, here's how we're going to be safe in this moment, it was no question, right? Because I felt that thing. And unfortunately, you can intellectualize it. And then you find yourself in a situation where you're enraged and you don't have the capacity to deal with that emotional rage. And I'm going to grab one and here we go. And I think we've tried to do the right thing. And I think we've gone about it sideways. And there's just some real lessons that you have to experience. And I'm walking proof of that. I've got the education. I got 2 PhDs worth of it. And I've got years on the jiu-jitsu mats. And man, one of them, I walked away with some pretty clear lessons about honor and respect and dignity and keeping my mouth shut and trying to find alternatives away from violence instead of, yeah. You know what I mean? It's transformative.
Yeah, no question about it, dude. I mean, nobody wants to be violent. Sometimes there might not be any other option at that moment. But I will say this, giving them the green light that I have given them.
Yeah.
John, I can tell you on many occasions, we have been reported back to by teachers, parents, and their principal that they are always sticking up for other kids and always including other kids. So
because they know we're both, they can put both feet on the ground. They don't have to ask, well, is this okay? Is this okay? dad has been clear and intentional. Here's what's okay and what's not okay in my home. And I think there's an intentionality there that kids just don't have anymore. They don't know. They don't know where they stand, what's safe, what's good, what's right. And your kids have a dad. My kids have a dad that said, your A1 is to take care of other people, period. God gave you a humongous body, then you're going to use it for good. And you're going to protect people and take care of people, period. And that also means that my son's at home right this second with a friend. A friend of his had heart surgery. They're baking cookies or something to take to the hospital, right? That doesn't always mean he's in a jiu-jitsu gym. That means he is looking around for what his community needs, what his friend group needs, and he's showing up either way, right? So I think there's just a 360-degree picture of what does care look like. It's awesome.
Yeah, dude. I now at their ages, which they're still all under 10, I'm really having front row seats to watching the years and years of unconditional love and being there for my children show up in so many ways. And I'll give you an example, and I'll try not to get upset about this. I've been reporting about my father being in hospice for a while, and
I'm sorry about that, man.
Yeah, it's all right. I mean, like, it is what it is. It's the life cycle. It's something you begin to, first it's like, Jesus Christ, this is the end, right? Like, and then it's like, all right, like now, let's get this shit over with, because this dude's not living a life. Now it's literally just this existence. And
but then you have that weird guilt that you thought, I wish this would be over, and then you have it's just kind of loop-de-loops, man. That sucks, man.
Yeah. I mean, but the one thing I could tell you, and it just happened the other day. What's today? So Saturday we went to see him, and we're lucky enough that our BJJ gym is like literally one parking lot over from the nursing home that he's in.
Mm-hmm.
And so we went in, and my father they had wheeled him into a day room. He's basically in like this recliner that rolls, and he just lays there for the most part. And at this point now, he just doesn't really recognize anybody anymore. He doesn't really move much. It's basically this almost barely comatose human being. So my kids are so fantastic because it's so out of the norm of what they'd be used to seeing. They're not raised in sickness like this. And dude, they're so mature when they go into this gym. We'll be in the truck pulling up, and we're having a good time. They're cursing. We're joking around. That's kind of our thing. And as soon as we go in, it's like they get right down to business. They're hugging their grandfather. They spend a lot of time. They hold his hand. This is not normal for like a 7 and a 6-year-old to be doing. And so a lady saw it. She was visiting, I guess, her husband or something. She goes, "You have really good kids." I go, these are only 2 of them. I got 2 more at home. They're just as good as they are. I go, they're to act like that at this age. That's really impressive. I said,
yeah, it's beautiful, man.
We're very proud
that's
of
awesome.
Yeah. What was your father like growing up with?
I mean, uber compassionate, and also we never hugged, right? My first time we hugged fully was not when I left Texas and moved to Nashville. I was 40 years old, and I took him to a coffee shop, and I looked across the table and I said, "Hey, I need you to know I think you did a good job." And if he dropped dead tomorrow, if I drop dead tomorrow, I'm glad I got to look across the table and tell him that, because I know every dad wants to know how to do. And he's got 3 kids that are great, respectable, good human beings, and we all do different stuff. And so he wasn't. I've hit the pendulum the other way. I hug my son every day. I hug my daughter every day. I make sure I say the words "I love you" every day. And those are tools that my granddad, who came home from World War II, and was told, "Don't talk about anything you saw or anything you did." There's not a toolkit transfer, right? And so my dad did a pretty amazing job trying to find tools where he could find them. And he passed on what I think is the most important tool, which is the tool of curiosity and the tool of, well, then go figure it out. And I happened to work at a place that I could get free graduate classes just because I worked there. And so I was able to go down a rabbit hole and get some pretty good info and be able to practice some of that stuff. So, but I had my dad was always encouraging my mom, encouraging my sister. My dad was always showing up for places. My dad would stick up for the least of these. My dad had some really candid things to say, especially when I was young, about homicide. That was just a humbling way to walk through life. He used to always tell me, man, I can get choked up thinking about this. He'd say, when I'm sitting down interviewing somebody across a card table, real quick, I walk in that room knowing that guy's a murderer. And real quick, I realize, but for 2 or 3 things, I'm that guy. And we often have like criminals, and we put criminal in big neon sign. But you take me and drop me in that kid's childhood and that kid's old man and that kid's abuse and that kid's economic situation. And then I get fired, and then they slash my tires, and then I go home and my wife's with the mailman. Somebody's going to not, I'm going to do something dumb. Right. And so there was just a humility that everybody's 3 or 4 really rough things happening in a row from that guy. And so be very open-handed with your life, be humble, and always treat the person in front of you with dignity and respect. You have no idea what war that dude's been fighting or what she's been fighting, maybe for her whole life. And I really appreciated that. There was never an us versus them. In fact, it was always, as an officer, he was always very much, it's me with these guys. And it might be, I got to get you out of here. I got to get you off the street. But I'm still going to treat you with dignity as we walk along the way. The only time I heard him get angry at people who was with bad cops, that was the only time that he got really fired up, and was when somebody in his own community disgraced the shield. And otherwise, I mean, he just kind of, and I think that translates to my show. I used to think people listen to my show because of my brilliant answers. They don't. They have never seen somebody sit down with somebody who's just said, hey, I just cheated on my husband. I don't know what to do next. And I'm not going to yell at you. I might tell you that was dumb, but I'm not going to yell at you. Let's sit down and figure it out. Or I screamed at my kids, or I did whatever. Whatever's going on in your life, there's just a humanity to it, a compassion to it. Let's figure it out. And if you can't work here, you can't work here, but I'm still going to love you. If you got to go to jail, I'm still going to love you, but you can't be on the street. And I'm really grateful that he taught me that, or he modeled that.
Nobody goes through this world without being a human being. And so
Correct.
with being a human being comes a lot of mistakes and faults and flaws. And so the person who purports that they are flawless are probably the most flawed. And the reality is,
get away from that person.
yeah. And the reality is, like, no matter what we do, the last thing anybody wants is to be judged by our mistakes.
Right.
And so I think that we judge a person in what their now looks like and what their future plans are, if they are trying to, just learn from those things that they went through. And man, I got to tell you, even when you said your father would get frustrated with bad cops, I had a conversation with somebody one time, and I'm going to try to keep it vague for purposes of this, and it really transformed to a lot of things. And he said, well, what do you think about a cop drunk driving? And I said, very candidly, I would just like to know how this guy ended up here. I'm not going to talk anymore about our conversation, but I would also like to know how somebody else ended up here in any kind of situation where they put themselves in a circumstance like that. And so while you think it could have been just a bad decision, maybe it just was a bad decision, but maybe there's something a little deeper than that.
Right.
And so I'm still trying to work on myself. So who the fuck am I to judge anybody else? Right. Like, I mean, I am working on myself nonstop, and I learn new things about me every single day. And when I think something's worth sharing, I come on here or spend time with the people around me and let them know, essentially what I've learned. And maybe this will help you.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's always just getting to the question behind the question, man. And I remember my first 10 years of working with college students and their parents, I was always hollering and yelling, not hollering, yelling in real time, but I was always, why are you drinking? Why are you doing this? And man, my working with people who struggle with addiction, my question changed, which is, dude, what has happened in your day or in your life that this is the best way your body's figured out how to get through a day? Mm-hmm. And I can't imagine having that much pain that this is the best way your body's figured out how to do it. Let's figure out some other tools, man, because the worst part about alcohol is it works until it kills you. The worst part about cocaine is it works until it kills you. And so let's figure out some other tools, man. And again, that ends up bringing you closer to people. Then they trust you. Then they'll listen to you. Then they'll walk with you. And then there's a possibility for transformation. They still got to do it. I can't do it for you. But man, coming at you with a pointed finger, then they got to wall up and defend themselves versus an invitation. Like, hey, let's get this thing settled.
I'm going to say 3 words and tell me what they mean to you. Seen, validated, and heard.
Man, that's the key. That's the key. That's the story of Jesus, if you're a Christian. And there's countless stories of him in the scriptures getting between those who were throwing stones and him saying, I see you. I'll sit with you. It's with my kids. I see you. That's my wife. I see you and I hear you. And so when she says, hey, this happened today, she's not asking me for my advice. She's actually way smarter than me. She's asking me just to sit there and listen to her. So seen, validate, her, dude. Those 3 words, if we as a United States could wrap our heads around those instead of yelling, screaming, whining, complaining, it was seen, heard, and validated. Now what are we going to go do to solve this problem together? Dude, you're talking transformation, but that's the key. I think that's the key to humanity right there.
We are a flawed society, and I wish I had more answers for folks, and I don't think it'll ever be perfect. But I think you can make your life a lot more perfect by leading the way for others. And unfortunately, John, I have to report that I believe there are some that are not convincible because they're not allowing themselves to be convinced.
Oh, no question. 100%. Absolutely. And that's what I say, like, man, there may come a line when, like, you can't be in society, right? You can't do that. And so you can't be here anymore. What do those words mean to you?
I think they're basic human needs that everybody deserves.
I think here's the, like, when I've sat with police officers and their families, especially their spouses, I often hear this, and I'll use your 3 words. I don't hear those 3 words as clearly, but I'll use your 3 words. My husband is really good. My wife is really great at seeing, validating, and hearing others, but they refuse to let themselves be seen or heard or validated. And there's almost this concrete shell. So I think often one of the greatest gifts we can give other people is a model for what this thing looks like. And so in our homes, sometimes leadership is letting others speak first and making sure others' needs are met. Sometimes leadership is having the courage to say, hey, honey, I need this. I need this. I'm not all right. I need this. And it took me 15 years into a 20-year marriage to learn that one of the greatest gifts I could give my wife was not expect her to be a mind reader and for me to stop being a martyr, but for me to say out loud, hey, honey, I need this and I need this and I need this. And I watch her shoulders drop and she's like, oh, thank God, I got a roadmap now to where we're both going. And instead of me just trying to come in and be a brick wall and try to solve everything with my muscles all clenched up,
Some of the best people I've ever met and known are those who accept people's flaws and don't judge them for it. It's amazing. It's an amazing skill to have that, to look at something or somebody that everybody else sees maybe is so dastardly and to see them with compassion. And I got to tell you, I practice it. We have a guy, I'm part of a mastermind group, and I'm sure he'll never hear this, but a dude comes along his first time at the group. It's a high-level group, right? I'm not trying to sound fancy. It's expensive. And so with that comes a level of, I think, person that shows up. And actually, we just had a conversation about this recently with one of my friends, James, who's also a member of the group. And he says, I'm in a couple groups. This is where you're finding the highest quality of what we're all looking for because of the ticket price that it costs to be part of this group. It's not a brag. And so this guy comes in and he literally just says some of the most outlandish shit in the world. Like, I mean, he's interrupting, like, dude, we have at our private events, like 40 to 60 people, they bring in like major names to come in and hang out with us, like A-list celebrities, some of the biggest social media, like Gary V, like all these guys are like, and they'll come and spend an hour with us. Dan Fleischman in the last one. It's just, we got some big names coming up for the Miami trip. But anyway, and I remember feeling at first like, God, why would you say that? Like, that's so disrespectful. And so I decided to take a different approach at it. And I said, let me just try to figure out what this dude's about and what makes him tick. And we got into the topic of, I spent energy and time trying to understand him. And I sat down with him. And when I got onto a topic that I saw piqued his interest, I mean, the guy talked like he was a puppy dog about this thing that made his, and it was he's an airplane guy, loves planes. He owns like 6 planes. And he's got ones. And so I was happy to go back to people and start defending him. I'm like, hey, he's a really good dude, right? He's just a rough around the edges, man. But when you sit down with this guy and give him an opportunity, you're going to like him. And, I think that kind of spread fire through the group, and people are like, yo, he's a really good guy. A lot of people have spent time with him, said he's a good dude. I go, well, I was telling you guys, everybody wanted to crucify this dude immediately. I mean, what he said was very frustrating. but I saw it differently. I saw it as an opportunity to figure out what he was about and give him a chance.
Yeah, there's something powerful about curiosity over judgment. Like, tell me more about that, dude. How does that work? You know what I mean? And yeah, curiosity, it keeps my blood pressure low. It keeps my metabolic health good. I mean, it keeps me from having an aneurysm. I don't have to immediately, whenever I just immediately judge somebody for something, I have to create a story as to why they're doing what they're doing. And I have absolutely no reason. I just make up a story. It's complete and utter nonsense. And what's beautiful about that is if I go with curiosity, I can make up another story that is compassionate and dude, that must have been awful to be in his house growing up for that to be the way he enters a room. Wow.
Right.
And
Sure.
one of those stories makes my shoulders drop and makes me a little more peaceful, which weirdly makes people want to be around you, which weirdly helps you in your business or helps you on the street or helps you whatever. So, man, curiosity, what a way to live life.
I think similar to you, I tell myself a story about somebody when I see them misbehaving or acting inappropriately, maybe lashing out. Why did this person get here? Who's kicking their butt behind the scenes? Where are they getting their ass kicked? What in life kicked their butt?
Yeah.
Right.
Am
I taking it personal?
It's just a great way to enter into a conversation. And like you said earlier, some people just suck. Some people just got to deal with, man. They just do. Or I don't have that level of education to unwind this, right? And I got to get you off the street, and you got to go, or you can't work at my business anymore, whatever the thing is. But yeah, dude, most people are doing the best they can with what they got on a daily basis, and most people don't have a lot of tools, man. It's just a different way to go through the world.
As you went through life, you obviously had a paradigm shift, and I'm sure that you're really happy with the version of John Deloney that exists today. And I guess it leads up to that point where it probably took a lot of courage to say to your father sitting at that table that he did a good job, and then to engage in a hug. How did you feel during that hug and after that hug?
Here's what precipitated that. I grew up in Texas. I lived there every day of my life for 40 years. And there's a very distinct culture in Texas, and it's just kind of the way things are. And half of it was in Houston, half of it was in West Texas. And we were going to have a family breakfast before I left to move to Nashville for the first time. And he slept in. And I left his house. I was late. I had to get going on the road, and I was in such a bad mood. And I was making up stories, and he didn't care, and this and that. And then I remember asking myself, is this how we want to do this? This is how we're going to do this? I have no idea, because he was working as a policeman, and I have no idea what he went through last night. I have no idea what his supervisor's given him on a daily basis. By this time, he was working at the university police department, and as a regular beat. So he'd gone from top of the top, and now he's working the beat. And I remember saying, I'm not going to leave like this, because my dad did a good job, and he needs to hear that from me. And so it was me being a grown up and being responsible and respectful, and realizing that like you said, no one's perfect. And if I was to take the good lessons and the tough lessons I combined, all of the lessons are making me a better dad, making me a better citizen, making me a better employee and a better business owner and all those things. And so in the aggregate, I need to go back and be a person of gratitude and tell the person who helped me out, the same as I tell my old professors, the same as I tell Dr. Young, the same as I tell the men and women who have had a big impact on me, the same as I tell Dave Ramsey. You changed my life, man. And so we often don't do that with our loved ones, with our wives, with our kids, with our husbands, with our parents, because they know. They don't know. Tell them. And I'll remember that hug. I'll tell that story about the hug at his funeral. It was a powerful thing, especially because I know that's uncomfortable. And so my dad stepped into a level of discomfort, the same level of discomfort I stepped into by driving 3 hours out of the way to make sure I met him in a coffee shop. He stepped into that level of discomfort to hug his oldest son. I'll never forget that, man. That was hard. That was hard. And I think I'll just speak in general about dads, but moms are the same way. We think it's going to be the big speech, the big talk. I got to say everything right. No, you don't. Hug them. Lean in. Go into the discomfort, man. That's the story I'm going to remember.
Has that precipitated more hugs? Is that a more normal thing now? Are you guys exchanging I love yous?
Not really. But here's what I do.
I get it, dude. I get it. Same shit.
Here's the deal. I know there's no doubt in my mind that my dad's not
Right.
proud of me. There's no doubt
Right.
in my mind. And I've come to make peace with it this way. My dad speaks Spanish. And I learned Spanish and I went and learned Italian. And I'm teaching my son Italian too. Right. So my dad's language of love is my car always had gas in it. Whenever he heard my brakes squealing, he was always under the car fixing the brakes.
Mhm.
And
Right. Yep.
like he made sure that I had a phone number to call when I was at college. I mean, he's always answered the phone 100% of the time when I call him. I need something, I have a question for him. And so I have no doubt in my mind that my dad loves me. I am choosing to take that baton and add to it for my son. And I think that's what legacy looks like.
Your father is a human being, was a human being.
An amazing one. Yeah.
And it comes with flaws.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, I think about my dad a lot. I know that he always loved me. My father had loads of flaws, just did. And I'm not going to brush some of that stuff to the side of what I got to endure as a child. I mean, I wasn't sexually assaulted and stuff like, you know, but, you know, I grew up with a man who could not control his emotions. And it was like living with a ticking time bomb. And it was a fucking nightmare. Yeah. But the reality is, like, it took me a long time. I remember saying to my mother, I said, if I didn't, I was like 22. I go, so if I didn't forgive him, I wouldn't be talking to him. She goes, well, what do you mean? And I go, were you like not there for the fucking, our child? Like and again, it's a whole nother story because I have no relationship there. And I just, you know, unfortunately, my therapist wants to go there sometimes. And I'm like, yeah, no, we're not doing that. Like, she's like, you want to just work on like being in the same room? I'm like, no, I'm good right now. I got other things I need to focus my energy on. That's not something that keeps me up at night, believe me. Unfortunately. But the reality is like, I was able to make peace with my father. And I told her, I forgive him. And she's like, forgive him for what? And I'm like, are you fucking, I know you are, but like, what are we talking? Like, are you guys really normalizing this fucking household? Like, are you guys normalizing what happened here? And, you know, and so, you know, the mother of my children and we have had many discussions in the past. And I'm like, you had a tough childhood too, man. Just different kind of tough. And we all have different kinds of tough. And I'm like, you know, there's two ways to look at it. Was it a blessing that you had such a shitty childhood? Would you have been the same person now? Or was it, you know, if you had a fantastic childhood, would you be the same mother you are now? And the answer is, it doesn't even matter. What matters is who you are at this moment. How you made it through what you made it through to become this person that you are now is just unbelievable. And you know, just be thankful for that. No matter what you went through, you now as an adult are the variable of who you want to become. And, you know, that was my next question to you, is like, how happy are you with that paradigm shift when you said you started getting different perspective, as you started to educate and learn about life? Like, how thankful are you that you've gone through that transformation and become the John Deloney before us today that people appreciate, admire?
Yeah. I mean, it's hard because, I mean, if you play that out long enough, I don't ever want somebody who was sexually abused or whose mom left him. I don't ever want somebody to be grateful for that, right? Because that's not the way it's supposed to be. I had a track coach. His name was Zoe Simpson, one of the greatest men I've ever met. That man pushed me harder than I ever imagined I could be pushed in high school. And I credit much of my character, my ability to withstand heavy and hard things, because I pushed me to the brink and then pushed me over it. And then I realized there wasn't a brink. It just kept moving because I got strong. Right. And so, dude, I wouldn't trade that for the world. I think for me, the big paradigm shift happened here. It was calling a mom and dad and saying, I regret to inform you, your son has died. I regret to inform you, your daughter has attempted to die by suicide and she's hanging on life support. You'll need to catch the first plane here. To meeting with people on the margins for whatever reason, and meeting with employees that I had to let go. Every time I entered into a dark, hard space, a scary space, after the conversation, after the back and forth, we always landed on the same question. All of us, no matter who we were and where we were, we always landed on one question. So what are you going to do now? And there was something really profound about me getting frustrated, getting mad, getting my feelings hurt, whatever else, and then asking, okay, what am I going to do now? And that we hear that in the popular culture, like what control what you can control. We hear that on the street, like control what you can control. What are the variables here? Let's minimize variables. All that can be summed up in, all right, what are you going to do now? And the quicker I can get to that question, when my son does something that 13-year-olds do, my gosh, when my 7-year-old does something that 7-year-olds do, when my wife and I, we've been together 25 years, married for 21, I still ask myself, who are you? Right? I don't think I know you that well. And I know she does that for me. Like, you're not the guy. I didn't know you thought that was funny or whatever. We still land on, all right, what am I going to do now? I'm going to exhale. I'm going to hug my son before I do anything else.
Mhm.
I'm going to hug my daughter before I say anything else. I'm going to hold both my wife's hand and say, I love you. We're going to figure this out. We figured it out before. We're going to figure it out again. We got a roadmap. We're going to figure it out. Whenever I get anxious or get freaked out or get nervous, I'm going to ask myself, all right, what are you going to do now? You're going to turn the news off first. You can't do anything about what's going on the other side of the world. You can't do anything what's going on in Washington. You can't. You just can't.
Mhm.
What are you going to do now? Sometimes, dude, and this might sound cheesy and trite. Sometimes I'll ask my son, hey, let's go to Waffle House. I live out in rural Tennessee, outside of Franklin. And I'll go to Waffle House and I will tip the waiter $50 or $100 on a $19 father and son meal, or with my daughter. I have to put myself in a situation where I can not only see the beauty in the world, but I'm going to make it. I'm going to put beauty into this world. And I'll never forget getting chased out into a parking lot by a big, humongous guy. I give a picture of a giant guy who's working the grill at a Waffle House, who works the 9 p.m. to 9 a.m. shift. He chased me out into the parking lot and gave me a hug that I'll remember for the rest of my life, because that $100 changed his life. That's how close he was to the edge. And so I'm gonna go put beauty into the world. And I'm not just gonna sit around whining about it and complaining about it and moping about it. I can't do anything about what's going on overseas. Can't do anything about what's going on in Washington. Can't do anything about what's going on in my state government. I threw my ping pong ball. I voted. Now I gotta play the game as it's dealt. I can go give somebody a little bit of margin in their life. I can give somebody joy. I can model for my kids what beauty looks like. And that's me asking the question to myself, what are you going to do now? And I think if most of us would sit down and answer that question, man, there's a much clearer path forward.
This morning, I felt like God was talking to me, and I literally grabbed my phone. I said, I remember I am, no matter how things get for me, bad or good, I have to remember others. And I literally grabbed my phone, and I say this not to brag, but to set an example of how this will make you feel. And, there's something that I just enjoy doing. My love language is giving. Oh, I love to give. I mean, that is just who I am. There's no, I don't like to
do with money. It's the funnest thing you can do with money. Yeah.
And this morning, I promised God a while ago I'd do this, and I actually slipped my mind, but I went on to feed the children, and I already sponsored 3 kids, and I sponsored 3 more this morning.
Wow.
And, this is also at a time in my life where I'm like trying to dial back some expenses in my life, doing an analysis of that a little bit. And, just trying to think about things going forward. But I just thought, you know what? I've been following the giving mentality my entire life. Even in my worst times, I always given whatever I had. And so this is an easy decision for me. It's a no-brainer, and that's a monthly donation. So for now until forever, I thought about these kids, and my kids are like, I want a gaming PC, I want an electric scooter, we have 3 gaming systems, like we need a PS5 for my room. And I'm like, man, there's a kid somewhere who just wants somebody to give him $35 a month so they can eat.
Can I have shoes?
And we're sitting here right? So we're sitting here talking about how many pairs of Jordans you want. And I'm like, there's kids who just wish somebody would give a shit enough about them to dig into their pocket. Maybe like right now, dude, I won't fly first class unless it's a free upgrade.
Yeah.
And so whatever the difference is, I'm donating it. That's just how I'm living my life at the moment.
That's awesome. Well, and there's the great Brene Brown quote that says, whatever you go looking for in the world, you're sure to find. And if you go looking for all the ugly, you're going to find it everywhere you look. And if you go looking for where people are doing right, where people are loving each other, where there's beauty, or you seek to put that out into the world, dude, man, And I'm telling you, man, you can spend $150 on a date with your wife, with your girlfriend, with your husband. You can do that. You can go to a nice restaurant, spend $200. I'm telling you, just try it. Go get a burger. And now burgers are $14 a piece now. So spend $50 and give your waiter a $150 tip. And tell me that's not the funnest date you've had.
Oh, it's a blast.
It's and bring them over and say, I see how hard you're working. I'm grateful for you. You've given me and my wife, you've given me and my husband an evening to drop our shoulders and to look at each other and to remind ourselves that we're in love, and we're going to bless you today. Try that. And to tell me that's not the funnest date you've been on in a long time, man. It just brings joy to your house, more so than like the moose pudding that was grown in some organic garden on Mars with I don't know. So seek to put it out in the world, man.
Dennis Benigno and massive tipping is synonymous. And I'll tell you one story that you're going to enjoy. And since we're on this topic, we years ago, at the time, my wife and I, my parents had a house near Lake Wallenpaupack in Pennsylvania. So we had a pontoon boat, a ski boat, and a jet ski. And so I told my wife's friends, she's 9 years younger than me. I'm like, guys, all come up. At that time, I started having some success. So I had some financial success. So I got like really nice catered food for the weekend. I brought it up and so the whole thing. So we go to this place on the lake. It's called, I don't know what it's called now. They changed the name so many goddamn times. And so, we had lunch there. It was nice out. Everybody had a drink or two, whatever they were doing. And I got the bill. And I said, they go, what do we owe you? I go, everybody's going to I'm going to tell you a number and you're all just going to pay it. I'm going to continue on by saying this. You all came up here this weekend. I have gassed up this jet ski 5 times in 2 days. I have filled up both boats because we're running them hard because we're lunatics. I have gassed up these boats. I haven't asked you for $1. You haven't paid for anything. I had breakfast for you, dinner, everything. We're at lunch. You guys wanted to come here. I'm asking for all you to throw in $50. There's like 12 of us there. And they're like, well, hold on. I'm like, I didn't want to go through the semantics of what you ordered versus who ordered. If I said to you on Thursday, hey, we're going to go to the lake this weekend, you're going to have the best time of your life. We're going to party it up. You're going to have a blast. We're going to have lots of fun. It's going to cost you $50. Would you go? And they went, yeah. I said, all right, give me the 50 fucking bucks. We're not debating this. And so I got $50 from everybody. So this comes out to be like, $600 on like a $235 bill. And so we give it to the girl. And so a minute later, she comes out bawling, crying. And she's like, oh my God, did you know it's my 21st birthday today and I had to work because nobody would take it. I was having the worst friggin' weekend in the world. And you guys just made my weekend. And she was crying. She just was sobbing. And I stood up, I'm holding her. And she's like, so I can't believe you guys did this. And so after this whole thing went down for about 2 minutes of her just profusely telling us how we made her 21st birthday, which was just going down the shitter, like just memorable. And I sat down, I go, so is that worth $50? And you got drinks and food? And they went, yeah. I go, you didn't know that was going to happen, but you would have never felt what that felt like for 2 minutes. That's to right. Change somebody's life like that forever. She'll tell that story to her fucking grandkids.
Yep.
And so was it worth it?
Yeah. So generosity is always worth it. Generosity is always worth it. With your time, with your wife, with your kids, with your husband, generosity, with your community, generosity is always worth it. Yeah.
John, I think that people, if they're patient enough to see the good in the world and start looking for it, they will see it. And I'll tell you, recently, I got off a plane this past week and I walked through Newark Airport and they have a community piano in there. And every so often, I travel a lot, I'll see somebody playing that piano. That dude, when somebody steps up to sit at that piano and play it, brother, I mean, people are getting it. Like this, I mean, you are. And there was an Asian woman playing the thing, and I heard it. I was walking down the hall. I heard that somebody was playing it. I said, oh, this is exciting. And I had a good morning that morning. I was feeling a lot of good feelings about the world. And I remember seeing her just sitting there playing that piano for people. And some people stopped and they were watching. And I thought to myself, what a kind human thing to do, to share your gift with everybody in this airport, to have the balls to go in front of all these people, sit down at this thing while they're walking past you, some not paying attention, but to play with your heart and give everybody an experience to watch you perform. It was
some light in the world, dude. Put some light in the world. That's right. That's right.
There is just tons of it if you're willing to see it. And sometimes in our worst moments of life, we think there is none. And so just be patient because it'll start showing up again. You'd be surprised. But the universe is going to want you to Be a good person. I promise you, no matter how hard it gets, it fixes itself. It heals itself, and it'll come back around. And, you know, sometimes you got to drink our own medicine. I tell people all the time, look, I know you're going through the most difficult time of your life, but everything that has been the worst thing that's ever happened to me has been the best thing that's ever happened to me. And you'll never know. You might not know for years, but that's the truth. And even when I go through difficult shit, I try to think about, man, what is this? What's the good that's coming out of this? Like, what's it going to be?
Yeah.
Where I drift off to.
Yeah. Or how can I make good out of this? Yeah. What's the next right thing to do? Yeah.
How else can you move through something than trying to see some positivity in it?
Yeah. I think it's important to pause and grieve. Grief is important, dude. And we have a culture that's just blown over grief. We just blow by it. If you feel bad about something, it's because you're weak or you're a coward. You can just suck it up and move on. That's stupid. Our bodies are designed to have some downtime, man. If you lose somebody you love, if your parents passed away, if your wife, decides she doesn't want to be married to you anymore, if your husband cheats on you, whatever your thing is, you had a picture of what your life is going to look like. That picture's gone now. Grieve it. Get some friends. As the great David Kessler says, grief demands a witness. You got to have a group of men or women that you sit down and say, I'm heartbroken. This is hard. This is terrible. This sucks. And only through that, on the other side of being seen and being heard and being listened to and being validated, on the other side of that is where healing is. That's where strength is, man. It's easy to flex your way through something until your body shuts you down. It's really hard to call a buddy and say, hey, dude, I'm not all right. And those have been the only moments in my life when I've truly healed from something in a pretty powerful way.
You know, I think that men like you and I, and a lot of people listening to this, even the women who are listening to this, especially female police officers, everybody's always depending on us for everything. And what I realized in the past year is I just need to stop and be Dennis for Dennis. I needed me to be me for me more than I've ever have. And I never realized that I had this I couldn't be there for everybody at that moment. I could give some to my children, and that just meant spending time with them. But overall, I needed some time to heal myself.
Yeah. The greatest gift we can give each other is to show up fully. And that means we have to withdraw, right? That means I've got to go get well. I got to take care of my body. I got to go get in the gym. I got to exercise. I got to go sit with a therapist or a coach. I got to spend some intentional time with my wife without a bunch of fanfare. Only then is my tank full so that I can go into the worst that my community is experiencing right now and be of any service to anybody. But if I show up there on E, I'm going to run out of gas. I'm going to make a bad decision. I'm going to make a rash decision. I'm going to do something impulsive. I'm going to do something that's going to cost me for the rest of my life. And man, love your community enough to go get what you need to be whole and well so you can go in all the way.
Especially when everybody depends on you. And, there are things that what I was going through, the most difficult times that I was going through and really trying to keep it together, that, there were some behaviors that I wasn't super proud of. And, I'm happy to report that those behaviors have subsided and I've gained control over those. But it's very hard to understand what you're doing when you're experiencing some very, very significant, circumstances in your life, Of
course. And that's what's important, to be compassionate with yourself and to have a group of men or women that walk alongside you, that when you're dysregulated, that's why you have a team, right? That they walk alongside you and they go, dude, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. I remember when I was an anxious mess and I thought I'd timed the next housing market collapse. I was like, I'm going to cash out my retirement. I'm going to do this. I'm going to move this over here. I'm going to buy this. And I'll never forget, my friend Todd was like, I don't really know what you're talking about. He's a banker with the state of Texas. He's like, you're not doing that. I'm like, no, dude. Like, you're not doing that. Don't do that. And now, 10 years later, that decision would have been hundreds of thousands of dollars of stupidity, right? So that's what your friends do. When our brains get emotional, it literally stops critically thinking. Your brain doesn't want you. Like, this, you've read all that research. That's why, I'm going to pull that out. In the UFC and the mixed martial arts, man, if you can get somebody mad, you're going to win, because they're going to throw their game out the window and they're going to lose control. It's the calm, quiet, gentle Brazilian jiu-jitsu practitioner that, oh, dude, I'm in for it now. This guy's going to be tough to tangle with.
I want to record the guys that come into this gym for the adult one after the kids class is done. And like, I want everybody to look at what these guys look like. And then when they come out with their purple belts on and their brown belts and their black belts, you're just going to go, just know that those belts actually mean something. And like, you would never, ever, ever. They got some bruisers in there too. But anyway, John, how do you look so young, for the love of God? I thought I was bragging here at 42.
My wife would tell you I have an obscenely insane skincare routine. I just like to take care of myself, and I stay in the gym, man. I try to eat mostly healthy, although I have a pretty bad addiction to gummy candies. I don't drink much. I've never really drank much. I don't smoke much. I mean, I just try to take care of myself, and great lighting, right?
Well, dude, you don't have a gray hair on your head. Neither do I, just to be clear.
I do have some. You just got to look real close.
Yeah, but you can't do like, I'm guessing by the you're at least mid 40s to late
45,
40s, right?
45, yeah.
Yeah, 45. I mean, you look fucking fantastic, dude. I actually thought you were significantly younger than me.
I appreciate that, dude. I'll take
which
that
makes
all
me
day.
feel like shit. But I actually still feel pretty good about it. I mean, when I'm out, people are like, "You like 28?" And I'm like, "We'll take it, bro."
All day.
If you think I'm 14 years younger than I am, we'll take. And so I tell people, like, I'm either 12 years old or 21. Your choice.
There you go.
Like
That's
my
right.
personal time, I'm 21 or 12. You're gonna get one or the other. You're not getting this guy. Not gonna happen. But professionally, I got to show up. Anyway, listen, it has been fantastic, dude.
I appreciate you, man.
What a great show, man. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on. I think Dave Ramsey does a lot of phenomenal stuff. I've been catching a lot of his stuff lately. Big admirer. And I haven't delved far enough into his economic strategies to give my thoughts on it. But I'm sure there's a lot of gold.
Here's the deal. I will send you the Financial Peace University for free. I'm going to send you 1 year of the Every Dollar app. It's the best budgeting app on planet Earth for free. That'll be my gift to you. I'll hook you up.
You're the man, bro. I appreciate it. Dude, how about I send you some like street cop sweatshirts?
I need more things that say street cop on them. So yes.
Dude, I'm telling you, you do. We got a few good ones too, bro. Like people like legit, you'll catch this logo. If you watch like live PD and cops, you're going to catch this shit all the time. Now we're going to see it on First 48 too.
All right. I'll wear it on my show.
If there's anything we could ever do for you, hopefully this is the last time I run into you. Please reach out and
vice versa too, man.
I appreciate it, John. Thank you so much. Enjoy the holidays, my brother.
Hey, thanks for taking care of our communities, my man. Appreciate you.
Working on it, dude. I'll see you.
All right,
bye, John.
Bye.